Welcome once again to the Legal Ops Podcast, a show about all things legal operations, the business of law and technology. I am your host, Daryl Osuch, and today I have with me, let me get the pronunciation correct, Matt Lhoumeau, the CEO of Concord. Matt, how did I do on the pronunciation? Close.
Pretty well.
Lo.
Honestly, I'll give you a pass.
Give me a pass.
Listen, even French people cannot pronounce my name properly sometimes, so you're all good.
God, thank God. Thank you so much for joining, and welcome to the podcast. You are calling in from Texas, is that right?
Absolutely. Austin, Texas.
How long have you been there?
It's been 4 years. I've been in the US with Concord for about 11 years, and I'm part of these people who decided to leave the Bay Area during COVID and relocate to Texas.
Oof. So is it primarily, obviously, then sort of kind of a home office there in Texas? Sorry, the home base in Texas, in Austin. Do you travel around Texas by any chance?
Houston and Dallas mostly for work. Yeah.
Yeah. So the reason I ask is because I have family that lives outside San Antonio. So I've been all throughout Texas. I myself am from Chicago, but I've been all throughout Texas, and it's so big. It's so weird. I love Texas. It's so weird, and I'm really curious, like as a as a transplant, like what's your take on Texas? 4 years is a good amount of time to have a good, reasonable opinion.
Texas is an enormous state, and so you will find absolutely everything in every part of the spectrum, I would say. So diversity is great for that. Yeah, I'll just stay there. That's
This day and age, sometimes err on the side of caution, I suppose. Yeah, I swear. So we have some random things in common. One of the other things that we have in common is a Japan connection, and we both speak Japanese. You have done, I think, proper study. I have done the cobbled together, learned by doing method of studying Japanese. But the reason it popped into mind was the one I love Tokyo. I love Japan. The one thing that I've consistently complained about in terms of the food, right? So Tokyo is one of the best food scenes. Maybe not number one, but among the best in the world. And you can get everything. It's so high level. It's so wonderful, except basically no Tex-Mex. You cannot get good American barbecue. And this is what I was born and raised on. So I'm always constantly on the hunt here in Tokyo, but don't have it. And every time I've been back to visit family in San Antonio, I just am eating disgusting amounts of barbecue to get it in before I come back to Japan.
well, it's a good thing. It means you actually have good reasons sometimes to come back to the US.
Yeah, true.
It has to be something, right?
Indeed. So let's kind of jump right in. For those that don't know you, you have an absolutely sort of fascinating background, and I don't want to sort of rehash all of the background, but there are a couple key points in your background that I do think it's just noteworthy. You kind of went to the U.S. and kind of started with close to nothing and built a whole lot, a couple of companies, and then in investing huge time and effort and good success with Concord. Is that the short version, the overview of your background there in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think it's exactly this. I think I had a chance or the necessity, I'm not sure, but you kind of have to reconfigure my life about 2 or 3 times now. Um, when I was 17, I had to basically kind of take care of my own. My parents kicked me out after I came out, so it was a bit complicated, and I had to, um, you know, start doing some small job at that time, and that's when I built my first company when I was 17. It was just a website about video games. But at that time, late 90s, that was pretty new and it became relatively big. So I sold it after a few years. So, moving to the US to build Concord, I barely had a visa at that time, and the money was just, again, just a new way of, you know, really trying something new and see if it works.
Yeah.
And it did. I think, America is an amazing country for this. I think this is one of the few places in the world when you can show up with basically no money, a PowerPoint, you have good ideas, you're willing to work hard, and you're going to find the opportunity here and the people to support you. I tried to do this in France, and it was absolutely impossible. So I'm very grateful for the US for this. Yeah.
Nice. Um, along, starting out in these sort of late teen years and into now, one thing that did jump out at me is you got a number of degrees. You got a couple of masters. How many
Four of them,
masters?
yes.
So four. Why so many?
What's interesting is that I actually dropped out of school right after high school when I was 17. Just didn't have a choice. And after I sold my first company when I was 20 years old, I really felt, I think, the frustration on not having actual proper diplomas in France, especially over there. It's
Mm,
part of the culture. Japan is a little bit the same thing. And the problem is, I just wanted to prove that I was probably as smart as other people, and so I needed that validation. I think at that time,
oof.
yeah.
I know
And
that.
so
I love that. Yep.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so that's why basically I started studying. At the beginning, I actually started with Japanese. I was taking night classes at the university in Paris, working during the day and doing this, and it was just for fun at the beginning. And I actually liked it, and ended up with master's degrees. I ended up doing in parallel another one in international affairs, and then I went to Sciences Po and to HEC. So think about it as the French Harvard and the French Stanford Business School, basically.
Mm.
So it was funny because I was not supposed to do any studies and ended up with four master's degrees. So yeah.
I I love that. That resonates with me so hard. When I from high school into college, for better or for worse, part of my college choice decision making was I wanted like this thing to show people like I am smart. Like this validation, like whatever else happens, I can be an idiot later, but I have this thing that shows, it proves, of course, it only somewhat had that effect, right? As an adult, you have sort of a very different approach. But I love hearing that. Just the key points in your life up till now, because it does sort of
You know what?
suggest hmm,
What's interesting about this actually is, so I was in that idea in France to try to prove things and with these diplomas. But one of the things going back to coming to America 10, 11 years ago to build Concord is that in the US, no one cared whatsoever about my background. Honestly, I had some of the best schools in Europe on my resume, and I worked for the former French president Nicolas Sarkozy, and no one even knew who he was. And so it was very eye-opening because I realized that people didn't care about this. I think it was more of a problem in France, I think, about just looking at people's pedigree instead of looking at really who they are. And it was really refreshing to be judged just on my ideas and what I was doing instead of what I did in the past. And so very different mindset when it comes to American versus French and Europeans in general.
yeah, yeah, I love that. I just the also, and this adds a bit more detail to what I was about to say. Was I love that thus far in your life you have kind of iterations, like you're running your life as a series of experiments, which I feel like is kind of parallel to maybe your approach and some of the comments you've made sort of on Concord, and the successes that you've had. But I do want to pivot, I guess, to Concord, and I want to set this up as you and I are opposite sides of the coin. So I'm going to make a statement and I want you to tell me your opinion. So
Hmm.
we'll go. We'll just go. Um, a contract is squarely the territory of legal, and non-legal members in business shouldn't really be drafting them, shouldn't be managing them, and probably don't have any business sort of administering contracts.
I believe that a contract is an aberration in business. I believe that it absolutely is not a legal matter, but a business process. And I think that we are going to see more and more companies manage entirely contracts without having anyone from legal involved.
Do you think do you think that you've shared this idea that I mostly agree with, that because of advances in technology, business process, and tools like Concord, that you could potentially have a zero legal team, or I think realistically a almost like a retainer for external counsel for serious things, but that's about it. Um, how far off are we from that? Are
It's
there
it's
qualifiers? All companies,
it is
companies of a certain
already
size?
happening. It's already happening. It's already here. And that happened even before AI really started to progress over the last few years. So just to give you some numbers here, so we've been working with Concord. We are a contract management platform, and so we've been working with companies for about 11 years now. And what's really interesting is over the last 11 years, we have seen a massive shift in who buys our system. We work mostly with SMBs and in-market companies, so companies up to 1,000 employees, right? So we have a wide range of customers. And what we have seen is that I would say until COVID, about 80% of the buyers that would buy a CLM were from legal. Today, 2025, 5 years after COVID, for our platform, we see about, I would say, two-thirds of our customers are not in legal. The department buying Concord is not in legal. And I would say probably about half of them do not even have a legal department whatsoever. So it's already happening. I think people have realized that, contracts can be managed efficiently if you're a bit smart about the template that you use, etc. And so you can just expedite that process. And I think there's still some companies still keep a legal team for real legal topics, but otherwise the contract management piece has been moved to operations or finance typically. And I think AI is going to accelerate that even more, indeed. But think about it this way. What is a contract at the end of the day? Why do we have contracts between companies? When you buy something at the bakery, you don't have a contract. Why? Because there are laws in place. And so the contract is basically, in a way, a failure of the government to make people agree on how business should be conducted. And I think, being European, I see a lot of things around this where, the EU has regulated a lot of things to help companies just do business without having to make agreements between them. That's one way of doing things. Obviously, the US is at the total opposite of this, but that's literally what it is. Why, looking back again at this, why are we signing NDAs? What the hell is this? Why do we have 60 different versions of an NDA per company? Why don't we have just one NDA that is common across, an entire country, and it was approved by the government, and you know exactly what you can and what you can't do? This makes no sense. It's not efficient.
The So let's try another one. Most contracts should have some negotiations involved, because I, as a legal member, need to ensure that the party that I'm entering into some agreement or some exchange with has sufficient sophistication, has the sufficient sort of knowledge that we share a similar risk profile. So even things like an NDA is effectively a way to memorialize that, yes, I'll be careful with your information, and any existing obligations, I'll protect them after this deal is done or not.
Well, I absolutely understand your point of view, but I will just, I'm not a lawyer, clearly. I'm a business owner, right? But what I will tell you is, first of all, it's not because you sign an NDA that you protected the company. You sign a declaration of intention. It doesn't mean that people are actually going to respect it in the first place. And so I'm more interested in the outcome than like signaling that sometimes contracts are. And so, I mean, it's true. It's true. At the end of the day, what matters is actually what are you protecting and did you really protect it? I don't believe an NDA is any form of protection. People will still, everyone at Apple sees an NDA and you can still see people that are living with trade secrets and getting sued. So an NDA is not a protection. It's one piece of it, but it's not the only one. And I think at the end of the day, you also need to look at, okay, you sign an agreement, an NDA. What are your ability to actually know if there is something that went wrong with it? Quite often, if there are leaks, you don't even know about them. But two, if you do know about them, can you enforce them? What would be the cost of litigating this? Especially in the US, it's typically pretty expensive. So at the end of the day, are you actually spending time and money, lawyers are not free, to protect something that you can really protect? And that's the real question that I have. Back at Concord, we it was fascinating. Like 9 years ago, we would sign sometimes customers for what, $5,000 a year on a basic plan for our contract management platform. And I remember distinctively that quite often the negotiation with the lawyers of our customers, if I look at the billable hours that they were probably doing on negotiating our contracts, it was more than the subscription that we were getting from them. Absolutely. And it was getting ridiculous to the point that we decided to entirely change our contracts to make them 3 pages instead of 20, so there's less things to negotiate, and we cut down significantly our cost there for our customers too.
That's fantastic. Let's try one more. Um, and you sort of you hinted a little bit at this, but let's try one more. Legal should own the contracts because they have legal effect and they are risk management tools for the business.
Yes, but in that case, legal should own HR. Legal should own any communication that your employees are sending by email or by Slack. Because at the reality is everything technically has a legal value. So you could, yes, you're right about this, but it could be true of anything. And once again, I think at the end of the day is what is the reality of things? What is the enforceability of all of this? And so I think, at the end of the day, a business needs to run. I'm not saying obviously that legal should let go of like very obvious risk and everything, but you need to ensure that everyone is really focusing once again on the outcome. What can we really do? And if we can't have an impact on this because it's too expensive, because etc., should we even bother? Should we be informed? Yes. Should we make that decision knowing exactly what we are exposed to? Yes. But at some point, if you can't have an impact on the outcome, why are you doing it in the first place?
Okay, we'll call pause on my contrarian statement exercise. There's a lot to work with there. I I'm the head of a legal operations team for a energy company out here in Japan, and one question that kind of popped up in some of those comments there was, have you seen in your position again, off either in the market or simply in your clients, is there any variation amongst sort of sectors specifically? Because I think you commented a little bit about size, but for example, I agree, and I think a lot of people in the corporate setting, have high volume NDAs. We see this stuff all the time. We have our own data to look at our risk profile for NDAs. It's near zero. So I agree with that. Does it have different import when you are a small business, when you have much less volume of NDAs and they feel more important? So is there any variation amongst sector?
Absolutely. There is definitely variation on sector. There's variation obviously on the size. That's a pretty obvious one. What's been interesting about sectors is that I we tend to see that obviously more tech-oriented companies would be a bit more, modern on their approach to legal. Would typically use a contract management platform. Will try to expedite the process a bit more. Whereas more traditional industries like construction, for instance, will be a bit more, still review contracts carefully, etc. So, but I've seen a shift over the past 2 to 3 years. I was just a few weeks ago with a customer we have here in Texas. I was in their office. It's a construction company. They've been around for, I think, 100 years. And they don't have a legal team anymore. They used to, they removed it. And so I think we can start seeing actually these more traditional companies starting to shift their approach a little bit when it comes to contracts and contract management in general. And I think it's clearly noticeable, I think, across all industries right now. The speed of adoption of new approaches, new technologies is everywhere. Many companies are adopting AI right now. But I just, even if it's not technology, think about legal operation. Legal operation did not exist, at least under that term, what, 6 7 years ago. It was not even a thing. It started really being like recognized as something important. I would say in 2018, 2019. Would you agree with this?
Yeah, definitely in the 10-year time window at most.
And so what's interesting is I think it's a sign that all of these companies are starting to see some kind of a trend here and are evolving. And so there's always sectors that are going to be maybe like 3 4 5 years behind. But I think that gap tends to actually reduce over time, and we're going to see more and more adoption faster for everyone, because it's not because it's nice, but it's just because I think companies don't have a choice. When I see how fast things are changing, when I see how fast we are able to build using AI, etc., you just need to adapt. Otherwise, in 3 or 4 years from now, you will be dead as a
Mm.
company. It's a Yeah.
I think, yeah, you must know, at this point that some of these opinions just terrify mid-career lawyers these days, right? I think that it on the one hand, it is a little bit scary. It's a little bit like a doomsday. We're talking about the end, or the beginning of the end of a career path. At the same time, I would argue, I was talking to someone recently that, the for in-house a legal team member, any legal member, my job should be business enablement. I should be sort of a Swiss Army knife. I have multiple tools. My job is not to change one word on an NDA. My job is, what is the ultimate? This starts a process. What is at the end of that process? How do I get to the end of the thing faster in a cost effective way? And in a way, I am a specialized type of process engineer. So, as much as some of your opinions might be provocative to people, at the same time, from where I'm sitting, I don't see a I don't see an alternative way to look at things given the current state of technology, the pace of change. You're saying that you're seeing it on the front lines in your own eyes, with your own eyes, right? Like,
Let me give you two answers to this. The first one is about how people react and are terrified about it, and the second one about what you just said about the evolution, I think, of legal profession in companies. On the first part, let me make a parallel here. You are old enough, like me, to have used CDs, right? For music, you would buy your CD and you were
yeah,
so excited about it. I still remember distinctively in France, we had the union of music producers, whatever, that when the MP3 technology showed up, started screaming about it and how we should absolutely keep buying CDs, and we're trying to pass all of these laws and lobbying to block the evolution of MP3 to keep
uh,
their business about CDs. What do you think happened? What do you think happened? Obviously, everyone is using an MP3. I don't know the last time I bought a CD. I think at
yeah,
the end of the day, this is the same thing when it comes to AI and what we're seeing right now. yes, you should be terrified about it. So what are you going to do? Just try to justify why the technology is not good and why we should keep it like the old ways? That is not going to work. You might, with a lot of lobbying, you might be able to save 6 months, a year, but that's about it. So I think
Yeah.
at some point, and I'm not saying it's good, right? I'm just saying this is what's happening. And so you have a decision to make. Are you going to master AI? Are you going to let AI master you? That's really at the end of the day what it comes down to. And so I think just closing your eyes and pretending nothing is happening is not going to help. And I tell, everyone in my company about this every day. I see how much AI is changing. And I think AI will be able to replace my job as a CEO, honestly, in the next few years. I am worried about myself here. So
Mm,
now, let me tell you about what I think is going to happen for legal teams in general. What's interesting is your legal ops, right? And this is the Legal Ops podcast.
mm,
Um, I believe that the GC of the future, what we consider as GC, I don't think there will be GCs anymore. I don't think they will be specialized really in the legal aspect of things. I think the GC of the future, the head of legal of the future, is someone that is a legal ops person. And let me tell you why. The reason is I believe it's actually going to happen for any managers in any company. I think the traditional manager responsibilities are going to shift. What used to be a manager until now, someone that manages a team, coaches people, makes decision based on experience. That's why they're managers. They've done this for a long time. But in the world of AI, let's look at this. Experience, expertise, zero value. It's
yeah.
horrible to say, but the truth is, you can ask ChatGPT or whatever, and you will get the experience of all the head of legal that talked about something on the internet. So you don't need expertise, you don't need experience. Should you still coach a team? The reality is, managers have never been really good at coaching. I have a few that can, but most of them they don't. Let's be honest about it.
Ah,
It's what they're supposed to do. They don't do it because it takes a lot of time. It takes a special type of people. And the reality is AI is better at coaching people than a manager will ever be because it's instant. There is no ego, no agenda. It's just easier. So that's gone. So what a manager should be in the future? I think managers are going to be people that build systems that allows other team members to excel in what they do. And so just to give
mm,
you an example outside of legal right now, but what we have done at Concord is we have someone that manages marketing for us. He's not a traditional manager's the way you would think. He's basically building systems, flow, AI prompts to make sure that everyone can do their job super efficiently in full autonomy. And it is amazing how much we have been able to unlock efficiency and productivity with this. And so we're currently doing this across the entire company. And when it comes to sales, for instance, why do I have someone coaching my team? I can literally just put all the calls that they made in ChatGPT and get instantly what they should improve on. And so that's the future. Is how do you basically plug the different tools and how do you make sure that people can do more themselves and have like that ability to self-improve? That's really what it is at the end of the day.
mm. I like a lot of that there. One thing though, I think I will disagree with is that the tool, the LLM, a chat GPT, can and should take over the majority of a manager's function. So I have this theory that if you have the reason, anyway, let me back up. The reason I have that opinion is you will literally lose the humanity. And I think that the human touch for edge cases is critically important, which is um, I put all of the sales calls into ChatGPT, say, according to my playbook, here's what you need to improve upon. Comes out in black and white. Um, but it's just looking at the last month of data. And the last month, I had a terrible month for several personal reasons. Prior to that, I had a stellar record. The way to deliver that information comes out differently if it's spit out black and white. You are failing to do this versus I notice you haven't been doing this recently. Is there something going on? We'll give you a little bit more time and support. It's okay, right? So certain edge cases, and here's the other example that I cite in debates quite often, which is I agree with you that legal teams will probably shrink. I agree with you that operations of generally, even bigger than legal operations, will potentially not grow, but become more powerful because they will be able to expertly use these tools. So then, if you have two similarly situated companies, and I'm doing business, I'm doing a deal with these two companies. This company is Chat GPT everything, and they've got three people. They're making tons of money. They're in this space, but they got three people. This company is making close to the same amount of money, but they've got just a few more people. They've decided to have just a few more humans on their team. And part of me is going to say, okay, they're using not as many LLM type tools, but I just feel like if something were to go wrong, I still kind of want to have these people, more people who I trust in the event that I need them, right? So I think that you would get a very similar kind of output from all of these tools, but I think the human in you is still going to be like, if something does go wrong, I still want to have this team to lean on, this team of people, right?
It makes sense to me, but once again, let's go back to this is very hypothetical. But let's take a real example here. You have a real issue that you mentioned. Well, in legal world, what it is, you actually end up getting sued. There is a problem, a data leak or something. I'm sorry, what do most companies do when something like this happens? They do not rely on their internal teams. They will literally seek external counsel for this.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
agree with you. You still need a human element for edge cases, but edge cases fortunately do not happen every day in a
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
And so you should not keep teams just as an insurance policy when you can actually gather the same talent on demand with external counsel. So I think that's really what it is, right? I think is, I mean, every company is different and going to have different approaches here. But what you just said, this is recorded, right? Let's take a rendezvous in 10 years from now, and we'll play this again, and we'll see where you stand at that point, because I believe that, once again, I'm not saying this is for the best. Once again, I have massive concerns about what all of these changes when it comes to AI, when it comes to self-driving cars, the impact on society, what it means. I have concerns about, obviously, the employment levels. I have concern about just our ability as human beings to interact with one another. It's a real concern that I
Mm.
have. However, but right now I am with my hat of a CEO of a tech company. I know this is happening. I need to adapt. I know that customers need to adapt, and so I'm going to deliver the solution that will work for them.
Yeah.
But it is obviously something that is going to be complicated for everyone.
Oof. The you've shared this idea before that these sorts of tools or platforms, especially AI powered, will democratize sort of contracts generally, but more importantly, um, you know, shrink the volume of things that should have eyes, contracts that should have eyes on them to a very, very small portion. And I do agree with that. You have used the phrase an operational tool as opposed to a legal handcuff in terms of contracts. And I do think that and it's very easy for me to imagine, especially for a medium-sized company. You gave the example of the construction company. If we're doing the relatively the same stuff, we've got sort of similar customer bases. Um, what it is I'm just mapping out scenarios, and if I have a new contract, this new contract or this new customer matches this scenario, and then we just get to work. In your example, I do agree. It's pretty easy to imagine that I don't need I just don't need an in-house team. Um, But again, I do think, because your argument also goes to a place where the power and authority of external counsel, the traditional practice of law, either in small, medium, or the sort of quote unquote big law, becomes more important because they will be called on. There, this is not an NDA. This is going to be the most complex thing. Um, so I think at the same time, as we're saying, for a lot of businesses, your need for that in-house legal team potentially shrinks to zero. For external counsel, when the time does come that we're going to call on you, we're going to ask you to move mountains, and that's quite an interesting concept.
I think you're right. I think what we're going to see is um, a major shift, I think, in legal profession where like actual real expertise on very, very specific topics, litigation being one of them, is going to be key. And it's going to be probably the only thing or one of the only things that brings value to this. I'm sorry, but like as a company, this is my third company. Why have I ever paid a lawyer to give me a template for an employment contract? This is ridiculous. I'm sorry, but like
Hey,
this is
hey,
not
hey!
okay.
It was a very good template, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. It always is, right? But so I'm sorry, but it's not okay. And why do we have legal team members in in-house teams that are reviewing for the 50th time the same exact contract? This is not okay. This is not okay to them. Why are we asking people that actually got a law degree and did all the studies that goes with it to review the same boring document that honestly an intern could do? So I think at the end of the day, if you do practice law, you should really practice law and not be a con-operated monkey, I'm sorry for the expression, to just review the same exact thing over and over again. I think it's insulting to them. I would not accept to do this, and I don't think anyone should either. And so I think that's what we're going to see is, I'm obviously very provocative with everything that I'm saying, but I've worked for 15 years with legal profession. This is
Yeah.
something that I really care about, and what I want to do is to make sure that we're removing all the useless work, the admin work out of the plate of people. At some point, if you spend so many years studying something, you should actually use it. Um,
Yeah. I also I that really resonates with me. I often kind of joke with people that like the worst case scenario for a lawyer is on their deathbed when your life flashes before your eyes. It's just a bunch of NDAs. Like, oh, I spent too much time, copying and pasting in Word documents. Oh no. I really do agree with that. I will say, I will add a couple things here. Is there have been, I mean, definitely in the last 5 years, maybe even 10 years, a rise in sort of litigation analytics, right? That are researching this jurisdiction and this judge, and this judge has a tendency to do things this way and prefers this sorts of language and stuff. And even again, if you dump a bunch of case data into certain engines that are sort of secure, you can have prompts designed for this witness, I need to understand the factual basis for these things. Please, prepare deposition questions that sort of support our positions here, and so on and so forth. So if you orchestrate a bunch of tools the right way, I think even potentially things that aren't fully absorbed or sort of commoditized in the context of a CLM or something like Concord still become highly efficient, highly automated. And again, still sort of follow this same general trend that you're talking about, that is sort of you're seeing again where companies are are having a zero legal team. That's such a it's a bizarre. I am look. I think you and I are similarly minded. I'm strangely excited by the prospect of a zero legal team. I just don't think the fun parts are the complex problems to achieve a business goal. It's
Absolutely.
just it's just not reformatting the heading on a letter that I'm sending out to a client. Um, Yeah. Let me ask
I
you.
think you're right. I think,
Okay.
the technology, as what you just described, is exactly right. I don't think there is anything new right now. I think the scale and maybe the speed is changing, but companies have been trying to optimize their legal processes for decades. It's just that in the
Yep.
past, 5, 10 years ago, you needed to plug 12 different tools to achieve this. And it was just a nightmare, the ticketing system and whatever. I mean, you probably live in it, right? So what's happening right now is, what we built with Concord 11 years ago was the idea that you just need one platform, not 12. We had the idea of, why do you even send Word documents to go back and forth on negotiating something when there is Google Docs? So what did we do? We just basically created a Google Doc inside Concord, so you don't have that back and forth. But that was 10 years ago. So I think technology has always done this. I think AI is just accelerating this. It's simplifying just adoption too, because you don't have to understand complex interfaces. You just ask the AI, and it's just working right away. And so I think, to your point, when I once again, I'm very provocative, and it's just the way I am, and just, I guess, part of being French, I guess. But what's my job is to plan for what will happen in 5 years from now. And so I understand that a lot of companies are not where, um, what I described, they're not there yet. But I think that's where they're heading. And so I'm just, I need to build a software that's going to be still relevant in 5 years. So I'm immediately
Yeah.
building for this. But I do understand that there is a transition phase. And I think a lot of people are going to have to come to terms with what AI means for them, for their own job, for their organization. And that's really, I think, going to be the most interesting and the most complex part. It's change management at the end of the day.
Yeah. Preach. 100% agree on that. 100%. The growing pains right now. I'm sure you see it. I see it in different conversations. The growing pains are, look, there is sort of pushback, but I think that I see more of the inaction, and it feels like some people are just so reluctant to leverage these tools, to play with them, to start learning now, and they're almost waiting for someone to sort of put it in a platform, to take their hand, to teach them exactly how to do it. In the meantime, other people around them are playing with this stuff and accelerating much faster. Other people are just
Yes.
running away.
Yeah.
And we're in the transition time, and that change management thing
We are.
is
But the
I love
people you're
that.
describing that are reluctant, listen, they are using MP3. They're not listening still to their CDs. So it will happen. It will happen. And I think it's our job as managers, as leaders, to help them get there. I think that's
Mm,
really important, right? Because I think we have a responsibility to our teams to set them up for success for the future in your own company, but just in their careers. The human touch element that you mentioned about being a manager, I think that's what it is. I think it's making sure that people, even if they leave your organization, will be able to find another job because you gave them the skills to do this. And I think that's our
yeah,
responsibility at the end of the day.
yeah. Oof, agree. That is absolutely fantastic. So let me ask you this, because I really love, and maybe we're sort of similar age range, but I love the framework of sort of record, CD, MP3. And then, we've gone past that now, right? To there's no longer ownership of an MP3. There's simply access. You have access to the thing you want, which was the music. You never wanted the CD per se. You wanted the music on the CD. Now we just have access to that music. Um, what is the next thing? What is the streaming version of the future of this technology and the sort of the business of law, which you are up to your head in all day, every day?
Absolutely. I think, when it comes to technology, it's already there. When you subscribe to Concord, you don't buy Concord, you don't own the license forever. It's a service, SaaS, right? So we already did that streaming when it comes to software. Same thing when you use ChatGPT, it's a subscription, you have access to it.
Mm.
So technology is already there. When it comes to the legal aspect, I think the future that I see, and honestly, this is probably 10, 20 years from now, we'll see.
Mm.
But I believe that we are going to see more and more of the standard contracts being probably approved by a government, like state laws, basically, and recognized across all companies. So once again, like an employment contract, an NDA, at the end of the day, we shouldn't be having like so many versions. It should just be one thing and you know exactly what it is. And so, there's been some initiatives about this in the US. I think the biggest example in the tech community is the SAFE agreement, which was basically a way to get easy funding quickly for startups, something that was built by the Y Combinator in consultation with VCs and startups. So it's something balanced. And now it's something that is literally used by everyone. Take the template, everyone know it works and it's balanced. So I think we need to have something like this. So I think we're going to see more and more of, you meant about like the access. I think you will have access to the standards agreement that work well for everyone. That's just on the contract itself. What I
Mm.
think is going to happen after this, or in parallel, I'm a big proponent of free access to information. I think this is how you build better companies, you build a better society. People know what's going on and they make their choices, right? And I think we are going to see more and more companies being willing to potentially share their own data when it comes to their contracts, their efficiency, to get in exchange access to the data of others, which is what we do every day. When you chat with ChatGPT, it trains on you and you get also the
Mm.
result from others, right? That's the entire point. And I think we're going to be able probably in the future, once again, probably 10 years from now, um, to let a company know that, well, yes, you just signed that agreement with that company for $12,000. Just know that all the other companies in your industry, in your state, sign it for $10,000. Or you're spending on average 7.5 days on signing your contracts when the average is actually 4.3, you're not doing well. I think we're going to start basically seeing more and more data about not just the legal content, but about the process. Once again, are you efficient when it comes to this? And this already exists, for other domain in a company. When you do customer success, for instance, you have the ability in different systems to see exactly how you compare with your own metrics with your industry. It's built in the systems. So I think we're going to see more and more of this in the future.
That's so That's so fantastic. I love that so much. So just to review, just to recap there. Um, Again, if something is commoditized enough, if something is high volume repeatable enough, there is potentially a future or an argument to be made that that should just be absorbed into the sort of the legal framework of that system. The NDA, why are people touching it at all? And at some point, high volume contract tools can make it so standard that at some point a government says, you don't need that. There's just, this is the rule. That paper is a waste of time at a government level. And then if you multiply that trend out to other sorts of agreements, and you still would have maybe a small core legal team or some sort of external legal team for complexity. But in your future, we're looking at sort of data trading between, well, a company is free to trade however, whatever they want, but a way to sort of profit off of the secure cumulative experience and data of a company. And that is just absurdly fascinating. I think that's a Black Mirror episode. And if it's not a Black Mirror episode, we should make it one right now.
Let's do it.
um, on that note, I think it's a good place to pause. I could actually keep going like this for a while. Matt, simply, this is fantastic. Thank you so much. And let's make a deal. Next time I'm in Austin or next time you're in Tokyo, we'll treat each other, please.
I'll take the ramens in Tokyo and I'll treat you to barbecue here.
Success. Matt, thank you so much.
Thank you, Darren.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast. If so, like, subscribe, or leave a review. Find the Legal Ops Podcast on your podcast app of choice, or select episodes and additional content on YouTube. And please do reach out with guest or topic recommendations. Thank you again.